Sit it, please. How far do you live from here?
West London, right by Heathrow Airport.
Well, Heathrow Airport.
Right,
Right
yes.
there. And you've got your own flat there, haven't you?
Oh, that's it, but I'm hoping to move within the next month. We've had been trying to sell our house for 18 months. We've had lots of problems.
I remember when we first met, you told me all about it.
A much older house in Uxbridge, which is just a bit further north of where we are at the moment.
Yes, please.
Today, due to the change of the time, some of the members. So we have started receiving questions from abroad as well.
Right.
So I'm going to present one question which I have received from United Arab
But
Emirates.
he was searching for one. Why will you start with him?
Yes,
eh?
yes, please. Okay.
Please.
Right. So you have announced the good news this week that a site has been found for the new London Mosque.
That's right.
When it is built, are there any special requirements, its size, its structure, that need to be
Well, all
followed?
that has been decided before we went into it, before we finalized the bargain. All these preliminaries had already been decided because we were not ready to invest that much money without first getting the assurance that we will be permitted to build a mosque of a specific size. So it was, with the grace of Allah, approved by the Council of the Full House before we went into the negotiations.
Right.
Right? So that's all right. I mean, no objection has ever been taken against that. And this is quite a sizable mosque. If permitted, and we can fill the mosque to its capacity, then it will accommodate around 1,500 or more worshippers at a time. But that is the area which is not yet finalized. Because the local people object against over much traffic being attracted by the mosque, which will interfere with the daily, movements, and they fear occupy all the parking places around there by the Ahmadis. But this is just a fear. There is no substance in that, because we have already proposed to reserve a parking place within the premise, which is around 300 and some, huh?
Yes.
For 300 some cars.
Yes.
It's quite sufficient to carry 1,500 passengers. So we don't need any outside accommodation. But gradually, with the passage of time, when they know us better, inshallah, their fears will be removed. Right? Good.
Yes.
The question, please.
So, one question has been received. He says that no doubt stealing is very bad thing and a very bad habit. But in the modern age, millions of people, particularly non-Muslims, consider it injustice and even inhuman to cut the hands for stealing. Kindly elaborate the wisdom of the Islamic practice.
You see, the question of cutting the hand is deeply related to the philosophy of economy. And it is not just a superficial decision or edict. It is very profound. Why has Allah granted human beings hands? For earning their livelihood. Now, if they do not use it for the proper purpose, and instead of promoting the economy healthily, they work to the opposite, for the detriment of economy and destruction of economy. They short circuit the means to acquire wealth or possession. This means that these hands are used for exactly the opposite of what they were provided them for. This is the philosophy. But it should be remembered that in a society where Islamic way of life is alien, where the moral standards have gone down the drain, such Islamic teachings are not applicable, because Islam enjoined on this detailed instruction after it had built the moral standard to such a high level where truth became the daily experience and falsehood was a surprising exception. When the truth really does become the order of the day and falsehood and cheating is a rare exception, then in such a society, the two things do happen. Number one, the practice of stealing becomes very rare and odd. Number two, the witnesses are always true, or almost always true. There is no fear for an innocent citizen to be wrongly accused of stealing and being subjected to the severing of his hand or so. So all these protective measures were taken by Islam. So Islam prepared the soil on which such injunctions could take root and flourish to the advantage of humanity as such, not to the detriment. That is why, please, once you understand the whole scenario, the whole atmosphere in which this teaching fits, there is no genuine objection left at all.
Yes.
If this is not acceptable to the modern society, what they are today is the alternative. What they have become out of laws which they consider to be more humane and humanitarian. What is the outcome of that law, that legislation? Let's consider the facts of life as emerged from the modern legislation on the issue of on the issue of stealing, etc. The society is rampant with thieves. It's abounding in thieves, and the number is growing out of hand. More and more police force is needed to stem the tide, but it's impossible. And the damage done to the society, not only in the sense of the property and the wealth misappropriated and robbed, but in the sense of physical damage as well, is so horrendous that the occasional, once in a blue moon cutting of a hand seems to be mercy as compared to what these thieves do to the civilians, to the law-abiding innocent people. The maiming by thieves in America is a common day experience. They don't like the severing of the hand of a thief who is professional, who has done so much damage to the peace of the society. But they daily live with the fact that it's a common experience in American life, particularly in downtown New York, for a lady who is walking the street with golden bangles or some expensive watch. Suddenly somebody would appear from behind, someone from the front, with a sharp weapon. They would sever the hand and take the bangle or the watch away, remove it from there. They don't have time to slide it off. So that is the easiest way. Now this happens almost daily, and this they accept as genuine. But when the criminal is punished, this is inhumane. You must weigh things on both scales and judge for yourself what is advantageous to the society as such. then the standard of truth being raised in Islam, when this Islamic injunction is put into real practice through legal means, of course, this ultimate, this ultimate measure of severing the hand of a thief becomes a very weird phenomenon. Look at Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is not an ideal religious society at all. The moral standards there are far from satisfactory. Yet just the fear of the severing of hand keeps the stealing in such check. As some people have told me, that if they drop a gold bangle or anything of expense anywhere and return there after 3 days, it will still be there. If not there, it would have been removed by the law enforcing agencies, whatever they are, and that lost item will be found in the lost property office. But most often people don't touch, don't see, because this is also an Islamic teaching that when you see something lying in the street, unless you remove it for the sake of saving it from the damage of rolling cars, etc., that's a different proposition. But if it is lying somewhere safe, without any fear of it being damaged, let it lie there. Let the person who has lost return to the spot in search of this and get it for himself. If not, then it should be properly handed over to the authorities, and it would lie in waiting for such a person who is who inquires even after 10 years. It should be found there. It's the most peaceful society which Islam wants to create for the sake, for the benefit of mankind. To dub it as inhuman is inhuman indeed. Right? Next, please. Yes, okay.
Assalamu alaikum. My first question is as follows.
Neither of you have introduced yourself.
Sorry.
All right. Sorry, I'm Rizwan Mohammed, merchant.
Yes? I know you, of course, but
all right.
for the sake of those who are viewing to you through television, yes, please.
Right. And I work for a division of British Telecom. I manage a help desk.
MashaAllah. And originally you belong to the south, don't you?
The Southall Mission House.
South of England.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was born in North London and currently live in West London, close to Heathrow Airport.
Right. Because your English pronunciation is just the typical Southern English, minted. MashaAllah. Please.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Ali Carmichael, and
Carmichael, yes.
come from Leeds Jamaat.
Which Jamaat?
Leeds Jamaat.
I see.
And I'm currently practicing medicine at St James's Hospital in Leeds.
And you specialize in which branch of?
I specialise in nephrology.
Right. Nephrology.
Nephrology, yes.
There are two arms to this branch of science. One deals with the diseases relating to kidneys, which can be cured or are cured with the help of medicine. And the other is such diseases as are cured only by surgery. So the surgeons specializing in kidney are called neurologists, right?
That's correct, yes.
And the others, physicians, are called nephrologists, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So this young, devout gentleman is a nephrologist, mashallah. Are you a reader, a registrar somewhere, or?
Yes, I'm currently a senior registrar.
Senior registrar.
Yes.
So hoping soon to become a consultant, I hope.
Yes.
Good. You have a fair chance. Good. Please.
Right. My first question is a medical question.
Right.
With advances in medical technology, it's now become possible to support very premature babies that previously would not have survived. Unfortunately, as a result of such treatment, many of these babies, though living, do suffer from significant complications such as brain damage and blindness. Do you think that there should be any guidelines dictating what the medical profession ought to do in such circumstances?
I think the guidelines are not specifically mentioned as such relating to premature babies and this and that, but in principles, the Holy Quran gives guidelines on every issue of human interest. For instance, the principles which come to my mind are first the safety of human life or protection of human life, even if something less important is to be sacrificed. You see, this is the principle involved in all sacrificial offerings. Man will not be sacrificed for man, but on animals of lower order can be sacrificed for man. And to save human life, if you require a part of some animal, it is not at all prohibited in Islam. Second, human parts, if they need to be transferred to save life, under the same principle are permissible as long as they do not pose a definite threat to the donor, because human life will not be sacrificed to save the human life. Secondly, child, as far as the embryo is concerned, any child at embryonic or a more development stage does not have a right prior to that of the mother. So if such a child poses any threat to the life or health of the mother, such a child can be aborted, and this is perfectly moral and in accordance with Islamic teachings. But if the child is detected to have some congenital defects, that is a completely different issue. To take the life of the child, to save him the discomfort of living with a congenital defect, is exactly turning upside down the issue of that principle upside down. Life must be saved, and smaller sacrifices should be offered to do that. Now, this is a very important relationship which you should understand. Here, mother is not involved. The mother is not involved. If the mother is involved, I have already spoken on that. Then the child must be sacrificed. The mother has a prior right to live, and comfortably and healthily. But if it is the issue of the child within him, his own congenital defects as set against his own life, then no man has a right to take the life of that child. If so, then why should not the same principle permit human beings to take the lives of those who are suffering with congenital or other defects, other mishaps causing some defects of such nature that the case of a person becomes very pitiable? Can you allow mercy killing of a baby who is delivered after delivery? Can you allow mercy killing of a child, a teenager, a grown-up man, even a very old man, highly advanced in age? If at no such stage you permit mercy killing, what right do you have to interfere with the baby as yet unborn? Right? I hope this bigger answer covers about everything which you had in mind in relation to.
Clear.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
Surah, a lady from Ghana wants to know.
It is not Ghana. It is Ghana or Ghana.
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 She wants to know, is it true that the Holy Prophet ﷺ was subjected to magic?
To be subjected to magic there's nothing wrong about it. But what is magic? That's the question. Why was Moses not subjected to magic? When he began to see the ropes as were thrown by the magicians to be serpents moving about. What was that? The Holy Quran refers to that event as a sort of magic which cast a spell on the eyes only, not on the ropes. The ropes remained the ropes. It were only the viewers whose sights were bound or eyes were bound by the influence of the mind of the magicians, so that they began to see things which were not real. And how this magic was broken, the Holy Quran continues to refer to it as a magic, but explains what magic is. It's not a hocus pocus. It's a real scientific human talent or potential which can be developed and which can be subjected to such apparently miraculous events taking place as happened at the time of Moses. For the viewers who looked on, it was a great miracle of the magicians, and they call it magic. But it was a simple, understandable phenomenon of hypnotism or some telepathic forces were at work. But when Moses threw his staff, it was not the mind of Moses which worked the magic. It was the power of God which influenced all the minds of the onlookers, even those of the magicians, and overwhelmed them with a superior power, binding their eyes to see what God wanted them to see. And what they saw was, it was a much bigger serpent. The whole staff having turned into serpent. And as though it was eating up what they had concocted. Now, this is the explanation of magic given in the Holy Quran, which is quite scientific, understandable. And if the magic of the magicians of the time of Moses can work on a prophet, why shouldn't it be able to work on any human being, prophet or no prophet? It does. But the bad effect which is purported to result from such influences of mind are always frustrated by God in case of His prophets. Like in case of Moses, their attempt was frustrated, and they themselves stood witness to it, that what Moses did was not magic. They were experienced people. They knew Moses was himself seeing that those serpents, those ropes turned into serpents. Now, if it's a psychological and scientific conclusion which we may draw safely, that anyone who once falls under the influence of a more powerful mind cannot by himself turn the tables against the man and gain the upper hand. So this is why they believed in Moses. They knew it better than anybody else, that it was not the power of Moses' mind which was working in this case. It had to be a superior power. So Moses was right when he said that he was sent by God. All of them, without exception, immediately stood witness to his truth and fell down in prostration. So this is the sort of magic which can work on the prophets temporarily without being able to do them any lasting damage. Right?
Yes.
Thank you.
So is it always necessary for a new convert to take a Muslim name? What is the significance? And
It is essential for a new convert to drop an idolatrous name if he has an idolatrous name. Otherwise, it is not essential religiously to change an innocent name, because every name is a Muslim name if it is not idolatrous, or can be, is entitled to be a Muslim name. That is the issue of Islamic injunctions. But there are other issues involved as well, which are psychological issues. And Christianity has largely benefited from employing these psychological issues by changing the names of African children at the school-going age, while they had not become Christian either. They just gave them, the names a twist, so that they could think that they were Christian names. They're sharing the names with their lords. And they felt a sort of pride in that. And they grew up with the impression that they were really these people. And that is how they succeeded in spreading Christianity. Not by holding debates with the pagans or anybody else, just by opening schools and hospitals, and at the time of registration to change their names to sound like Christian names. In a society here where the acceptance of Islam becomes an act of great courage, not from the point of view of any persecution which may follow on the religious basis, but from the point of view of a very strong pressure brought upon all converts from the social areas. They are sort of tabooed, put out of themselves, thrown out of themselves without saying it in so many words. And they know that they are looked down by their own people. And it's a great courageous act for a man in a British society or a German society, more so in Britain than in Germany, to become a Muslim. Now, it is not difficult for an Englishman to become a Hare Krishna follower or a monist, because they are cults, and the cults never threaten the old orders. They know they'll come and go, They're just, passing phases of a society at a junction of two different generations. These things happen. But when you become a Muslim, that is a serious crime, because the entire history of Muslim-Christian confrontation is invoked. And you see now what is happening, bit by bit, where they are breaking away us from within and strengthening the hand of Islam in our country, which is a political threat, according to some, not in reality. So it is a social threat which has become serious because of its having the nature of a political threat as well. That is the background why this social threat is taken far more seriously than the social threat of becoming a Hare Krishna or somebody else. So I know the pressures from the family and the circles around are very powerful. As such, the tendency to give in to those pressures will raise its head here and there. And hiding the fact by not changing the name will be assisting this tendency, this natural tendency to defend oneself. And in this way, I don't think you will gain any psychological upper hand or a psychological domination. In fact, you will go under that pressure slowly and gradually without realizing what's happening to you. So although religion has no objection against continuing to have the same names as you possessed before your conversion to Islam, if they are not idolatrous, but psychological requirements and the social requirements would advise you to better change the name and face the music. Right? Thank you. Next, please.
My second question concerns homeopathy. Homeopathy has many adherents as well as many skeptics. In view of the fact that you, Hazur, practice homeopathy, could you provide some insight into, firstly, your source of knowledge, and secondly, what do you think homeopathy has to offer that conventional medicine does not?
You see, first, this is a very big question, small as it may appear. It's a very big question. It has to be answered say, in a discourse lasting 30, 40 hours. That I have already done. During my homeopathic lectures, I have explained the background of homeopathy, the philosophy of homeopathy, the way it works, and the advantages it has over other systems of cure. But one most important advantage the homeopathy has is that it does not cure from outside. It cures from within, in the sense that it excites the human reaction to an awareness of a disease which is already eating it up quietly, without the body reactions having been aroused. Now this happens in daily life, and allopathic science also recognizes this fact in daily life. Anyone who is exposed to the germs or the viruses of smallpox is very likely to be influenced by that and overpowered by such an attack. But anybody who has had that small and what do you call this?
BCG.
Huh?
BCG.
BCG, yes. BCG. It's not injection. It's done by mark, like creating pock marks or
Just
scraping
Yes.
things.
Yeah.
And what is that phenomenon? That's what I was thinking of. When you do not inject but do some scraping and thing, and by the slight injury is caused, you let the serum enter the blood. This is called vaccination in general, so let's call it vaccination. Through the process of vaccination, what they do is they inject exactly the same virus and the poison it creates into the human body, but to make it 100% certain that it fails to overpower the system. Is created, and then the body reacts against the human's immunology system, system of immunology, as you call it, or
Immunological system.
immunological system, suddenly regains the awareness. Something of this nature may happen to us, and it rises against that. It fortifies itself against this. And that is what the doctors say, that injured part has taken. When it erupts, that means the body reaction has already been realized, and once the body becomes aware of it, it will remember it. Year after year after year. And whenever the same threat is created again, they're even far more powerful. Body is capable of building the same antibodies which it has already done for a while, and hit back where it hurts and destroy the invaders. Now this allopaths know only in relation to live attacks of viruses or germs. In homeopathy, this system is employed against any threat to human health which is an outside threat. When even after it has taken place, even after it has overwhelmed the system and it has been taken unawares and subdued and overwhelmed by this, a reaction can still be created according to homeopathy. If you know the nature of the disease from its symptom complex. So that is why when you speak of homeopathy or hear of homeopathy, you always hear of symptoms. What is symptoms? If you understand that, then you will understand the method of preventing diseases in homeopathy or method of curing diseases in homeopathy. Now when we call somebody, declare somebody as diseased, far more often than not, what we are talking is of symptoms, not of real underlying disease. Somebody comes to a doctor, says, I'm suffering from polyuria or burning in the urine, and the nephrologist will take it to be a disease. If he has means at his disposal, he will send him for further investigations and find out the reason as to why this was happening. But he will stop at that. He will declare that the mucous membranes of the kidney have suffered for some time until they are at the verge of breaking down. And in patches they have broken down. So kidney is no longer functioning normally. So how to patch up this damage done is the task of the physician in allopathy. But nobody knows why such a patient or any one patient is suffering from kidney diseases. What preceded it? What are the underlying factors? In a family, people who eat the same food, live in the same style, some are suffering from this and some are not. They may sometimes tell the patient that this is congenital, you inherited from your parents. It only pushes the initial cause backward in time, not detecting it anyway. So in homeopathy, we accept defeat in that. We say we can only go by symptoms, not by the underlying factors. But we have a way of reaching the underlying factor and destroying it through a very clever approach. And that clever approach is the one which was devised by Hahnemann, and as such he was one of the greatest physicians of his time, all time in fact. He looked at this from a very different angle. He had been an allopathic practitioner for a long time, and gradually he was absolutely disgusted with the defects of not his practice or in the prescriber, but the defects of the system itself. And he outlined some of those defects, but I'm only going to give you a small illustration. He said when somebody suffers from nausea and vomiting, for instance, we give him a tincture of ipecac and opium in dilute and minute doses. And many often it cures. That tincture cures this tendency to nauseate and to vomit. Yet, he reminds us that all the physicians know very well that given in larger dose, the same two medicines or chemicals would create very powerful tendency to nauseate and to vomit. So this was the one thing which gave him the cue to cure. He said what happens is we only succeed in curing the underlying malady or dyscrasia because this poison is related to that malady. It has the potential to create that. Now when you give it in minute dose, it fails to create. And it's this failure which gives the body the occasion, the opportunity to recognize it and pinpoint it and attack it, as a countermeasure. So this, he said, helps us in devising a system of suppositions. But that system can only work if you study the poisons to their minutest details in their effect on human beings. He said, for instance, take aconite. Aconite is a poison, a herbal poison, whose effects are largely noted down by the physicians all over the world. But he further investigated the effect of aconite on human beings with a very minute eye of observation. And the features, for instance, I give you, which he first brought to our notice. Aconite is a poison which always produces a sense of deep fear, overwhelming fear. None of the physical diseases created by aconite will be without that accompanied fear, with concomitant fear. And then the suddenness, and perhaps they go together. An aconite patient, when he suffers from headache, he will not be given any warning of a gradually proceeding headache rising in crescendo. It will be a headache of a very severe nature appearing suddenly. And then aconite patient is far more likely to fall ill. Aconite patient, by that he means anyone who is susceptible to have the influence of aconite more than other human beings. He will fall ill more often in dry cold or dry heat, not in the wet weather. So when the climate is dry, and extremely dry for that matter, either very cold or very hot, if some patient suffers from a headache which appears suddenly and which is accompanied by an overwhelming fear of death in particular, he said, we don't know that this disease was caused by aconite. How can we say that? But whatever the malfunctioning of his inner order, the effect produced is very similar to that of aconite. So when the symptoms demand and you give a dose of aconite, the patient is suddenly relieved of all these symptoms. And because the dose given is so minute that it can have no direct effect on glands and other human organs, so it is safely assumed that our supposition was right, it has hit where it was needed. and the system has, knowing what is within, has moved in the right direction in pursuit of the thieves and robbers wherever they are. And unless the system had cured the disease within, how could the symptoms disappear? See, this is in nutshell homeopathy. So it is a very difficult system to operate, because a physician has to remember hundreds of medicines used in homeopathy in their effect on every part of human body. What mental symptoms like aconite I have described would be produced by a certain poison. Will it make a man timid? Will it make a man rash, irrational, or soft-minded with accommodating approach, and so on and so forth? Will he make a man with this with any particular poison? Will make a man of ill-tempered to the extreme nature, or soft-hearted that he, at the slightest cause, he will start weeping or crying and feeling very very bad. So all these and so many other effects on mind are always minutely noted and registered by homeopathic experimenters all over the world, until a universality is discovered in those experiences, until it can be safely declared that they're finding how in the hot weather, how the summers do to you, what the summers do to you, and what the winters, what the wet weather brings by way of ailments. Does it aggravate things, or does it ameliorate your diseases and so on? Rest against motion, sleep against waking, noises or the lack of noises, and the inner feeling, subjective feeling which is strange. You hear voices, or you feel that you are seeing ghosts, and so on and so forth. And the nature of the disease, how it is ameliorated. Does warmth ameliorate it, or cold does it? Is it throbbing if it is pain? Is it dull, continuous pain? Is it a cutting pain, like with a sharp knife, or it is of a different nature altogether? Do you have a feeling of something bursting out or being suppressed in? All these symptoms have to be remembered by a homeopath. So if a patient comes, he watches him quietly and says, okay, this is pastilla, this is aconite. And if his disease is right, if his reading is right, then the medicine will work like magic, although there is nothing of the original chemical found in it when it's used as homeopathic medicine. Aconite or sulfur or chamomile, or whatever name you give these medicines, when you give a patient a dose of sulfur or chamomile or aconite, more often than not it starts from 30th potency, and it is common potency with which we cure patients, attempt to cure patients. The higher is 200, then 1000, until cm 100,000. You know what it means? You are both scientists, you should understand immediately.
Is it parts per?
No, not at all.
It's not fractional.
If you take a drop of aconite and mix it with 100 drops of some dilution and repeat it 30 times, take a drop of the first dilution and put it in 100 more drops of another dilution, and so on. Can you imagine the mind-boggling figure it will produce at the end of the 30th exercise? 60 zeros written on the right side of 1, underneath one drop, 1 over 1, 60 zeros. What figure is that? Do you know any name for it in any language? This is the extent of dilution to which aconite drop is subjected. Whatever remains is most certainly not a physical presence. It is just the presence, if at all, of anything, is a memory. So it takes us into a more complex and amazing phenomenon of nature, which we simply can't understand. The science has not yet developed enough to study the system of memories in nature. Anything which comes into contact with other leaves a fingerprint, if it is a hand. That much we know, but we do not know the fingerprinting of qualities. And according to the Holy Quran, this is true. This is exactly what is described by the Holy Quran, that nothing that man does can ever be effaced from his person, from his life. Traces will always remain, and they are retrievable traces. Traces of that will be retrieved from his soul when it is reborn in the hereafter. And in amazement he will say, look at my skin, look at my eyes, look at my tongue. They are standing witness against me. And in amazement, some would say, according to the Quran, Mali hazal kitabe la yughadiru saghiratan wala kabiratan illa ahsaha. What manner of book that is? It has not left out even the minutest detail of my life, nor the big things. Nothing escapes it. So this system of inbuilt memory is as yet beyond the reach of human study. Only glimpses are appearing now. For instance, from some buried carcasses or bodies which are kept fresh because of the extremely cold weather of elephants and things, or even dinosaurs, they have discovered that their skins still carry the characters which are born by their chromosomes, etc. So the cells of the skin still retain those characters which they enjoyed and possessed during the time of their domain on earth. Around 400 million years ago, or whatever it is, or 200 million years ago. It's a long time. And yet the skins are not deprived. Some cells still retain that quality. And strangely, the Holy Quran speaks of skin in particular, not of the flesh. It says, they will say, our skin has retained the marks of what we have been doing. So this memory system is now being traced at the very earliest level, the lowest level, by human scientists. But what the Holy Quran speaks is something beyond our imagination. Yet homeopathy takes us closer to that. Because unless there was no such memory system, homeopathy should not have worked even at the low potency of 30. But it works, and so surely, positively, at 100,000 potency. The results are amazing, absolutely, mind-boggling. More than that. Take a drop of some medicine, dilute it to the tune of writing 1 and 200,000 zeros on the right side. You see, the subatomic particle of the entire universe do not number that much. You can ask any specialist of this field, they say no question of that. The entire universe does not contain even the subatomic particles, which are so numerous, far more than the atoms and molecules, to the number of 1/200,000 zeros written on the one side. So what is that which works there? It works so positively, most certainly. I can demonstrate it, I have daily experience with this, and the cures, the cause are immediate and fantastic. That is what can't be done by allopathy, because system is based on different principles. And terminal patients of cancer, when you give the right dose in the high potency, they immediately show response and begin to be cured and end up their journey satisfactorily, ultimately, to have been delivered from the so-called incurable disease. So this is a system which takes us closer to God, closer to the concept of spirit, closer to the understanding of things which we cannot reach by our five senses as yet. There is no medium, scientifically known medium, chemical or physical, which can make us understand this, that it works, it should work. It works all right, so it would be scientific to believe in it, because the observation will compel us to believe in it. But how it happens, that still lies outside our power and access, right? So I couldn't compress the answer more than this.
No, it's a very detailed and clear answer.
Thank you.
you.
We have time, haven't we? Yes. How many minutes? 2?
I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes.
4 minutes. Good. So I think we should request you.
So what is the meaning and significance of the Kaaba, and why are Muslims asked to face towards the Kaaba during prayer?
Right. The significance lies in the unity of God. The whole mankind has to be brought ultimately to one single entity of human beings under God. So facing a direction is highly important. It plays a very important role. That you must aim at the single thing, wherever you are. And to choose Kaaba wouldn't be a better choice. Could not be a better choice than this, to choose Kaaba. Because Abraham, who stands as a symbol of unity of God in the three major religions of the world, rebuilt this house of God for the purpose of worship of Him and Him alone. So if any house deserves to be kept in view, which will not become a symbol of idolatry, but will lead you to the idea of oneness, must be the house of Abraham, which he built for sake of God, or reconstructed it rather, I should say, for the sake of worship of one God. So this is the significance of that house. Otherwise, instead of the house does not mean anything. That is why the Holy Quran says, "Anama wa tawallu fasamma wajhullah," pointing out at the necessity of trying to point at the same location during your worship. It says, if you can't, it does not make any difference, because whichever way you face, God will be there. So this additional information warns us that it is not that God is there that you are facing yourself to in that direction. God is everywhere. So don't misassociate it with the presence of God. God is everywhere. It serves additional purposes. And the purposes, like I have described, could have a real claim on this. Right? Please.
My last question would be concerns peace and what's been developing in the world over the past year. 6 to 12 months ago, it appeared that peace was developing where previously likelihood seemed remote, namely Palestine, Northern Ireland and Bosnia. However, major setbacks to this process have developed in both Palestine and Northern Ireland. Do you have any thoughts on what the Bosnians should do in order to avoid a similar fate?
To avoid similar things,
Yes.
like the Palestinians did
Yes.
before them.
Yes.
In fact, when the problem began, this was my mission, to reach the Bosnians everywhere in Europe, either through my messengers or directly, or invite them to our place. And the one most important advice I rendered them was to avoid this danger, which will be suicidal if they ever attempt to do it. I said it will be suicidal for their cause and suicidal for the peace of Bosnia and in Bosnia, and suicidal for the peace of the countries who shelter you. So behave for God's sake and don't fall into the trap of such people who are waiting for their chances to pounce upon them, to create disturbance and disorder. But these things never repay. They never gain you your objects or bring you closer to your objects. They always push you apart, further apart. And then I told them to realize that the European community as such is not so dedicated Christians as to hate Muslims wherever they are. It's absolutely false. They hardly care for Christianity in most cases. They are only afraid of some political misbehavior on the part of the Muslim states joining hands together in the name of the supremacy of Islam over the rest of the world. So why to give them a foothold in the heart of Europe and give them an opportunity to re-invoke the images of the battles in Eastern Europe between Turkey on the one hand and Romania and other states on the other, and creating problems for all over the world, all over Europe. I said this is the reason why they are permitting these cruelty to continue to be perpetrated against you. Not that really you are Muslim. They know better than that. They know you drink, you dance, you do this and that. Very few among them are mosque-going Muslims like they are church-going Christians. So this is not the fear. The fear lies in the political area. If you misbehave, they are going to hit at you wherever you are then. If you show over-enthusiasm for medieval Islam, you expose yourself to danger. Medieval Islam means a distorted Islam which permits the use of sword for the spread of ideas. Right? So this is what we could do, and this is what we have done with a great success with the grace of Allah. We have completely transformed their attitudes, and none of them has ever turned to Gaddafi or Iran or any Palestinian government. This is the proof that our strategy has been very effective and successful with the grace of Allah, and this has resulted ultimately in the solution of their problem. Right?
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the time is over, so we call it a day, and I take leave of you. Thank you for coming, and I hope to meet you again and again. I want more Britishers to participate in such meetings, because this is their side we are sitting on, and with the grace of Allah, they have provided us this opportunity, and it is a courtesy extended to us, which they extend to everybody else as well, if they take advantage of that, to speak to the whole world and to be visible to the whole world while we are sitting here in this small room. So they have a prior right to be addressed themselves. So I would like more and more Ahmadi youth to bring their non-Muslim friends with them and give them an opportunity to ask questions. Otherwise, if only the Ahmadi youth ask questions, they would
maybe they look at them with some suspicion that they are asking leading questions to entrap us. So they will be on their guard. So it is much better to produce a genuine program which is psychologically acceptable to all. So like previously you used to do,
Yes, yes.
let the Ahmadi friends bring their own non-Ahmadi and non-Muslim friends with them, then this program will be more meaningful and productive, I hope. Right? Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Mr. Sam.